a small town, almost like a farm city. When I was in university, I used to throw parties, little parties, maybe 100 people, 150 people was a good party. And I wasn't like a promoter. I just did it for, maybe I can make a little bit of money, like very small amount, maybe $50. I can maybe meet some girls because I was young. I was like, oh, and then I could DJ with my friends. And this was 2003, 2004. And the electronic music wasn't very popular. It was sort of underground, or you need to be part of like a small culture of other people that enjoyed it. So I used to throw these little parties. I used to DJ myself very, very badly. But it was myself and my friends playing music that not many people knew of, except maybe the 100 people that would come and pay $2 or $5 to get in. And I started researching music more and more on MySpace. And I ended up finding this guy named Steve Aoki. And he was the very first DJ that I really started looking at. He was throwing a party in LA, doing the same thing I was doing, but obviously way better, way cooler. And it was Los Angeles, so even more cooler. I messaged him on MySpace and I just said, hey, would you want to come to Canada to DJ a party? I had no money. I didn't know even what it meant to bring somebody somewhere. I didn't know all the rules. I didn't know anything. And Steve at that time was a very popular LA DJ, but not known anywhere else. Nobody knew him outside of LA. He wasn't a famous person. He was just throwing these cool parties. And I think it was 2005 is when he came to Canada and played my party for about 150 people. And we had like this makeshift table where we put all the DJ equipment on. It was very, very low budget, but he came and I put all the cost on my credit card. And it wasn't a high cost. It wasn't a lot of money, but it was a lot of money for me. He came and he played the party. And luckily enough for me is we became friends then. So we just hit it off as friends. And from that first moment for about 2 or 3 more years, I would bring him back to my city maybe once a year. We stayed in touch and we played. But I wasn't in music. I was a bartender and I was a student. I wasn't in music. I wasn't a manager. I wasn't anything like that. But I kept on doing these parties just to make a little bit of money and have fun. And after, it was probably 2006 or 7, I decided I wanted to get into the business. And I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know how to do it. I'm from a small city. So I moved to Toronto, Canada, which is the biggest city in Canada, which is like the New York of Canada. And I said, all right, I'm going to work in music. I didn't know anybody. I didn't know what I was doing, what I wanted to do. But I was lucky enough through my old parties, because I used to bring a bunch of DJs, Steve Aoki, Diplo, all these like cool acts from the early 2000s to my party. So I had a couple friends that would help me out, and I got introduced to which became somewhat of my mentor. He was a very famous Canadian music lawyer. He owned a record label, and he was also a music manager. He was very, very big in Canada. His clients were everybody from Drake to Crystal Castles and Mastercraft. He was the cool person. So I was lucky enough to meet him. And I said, hey, I want to come work for you. And he sort of laughed at me and said, there's no jobs. Who are you? What's your background? I had nothing. I moved to Toronto with like no money, thinking, all right, I'll be fine. I'll make this happen. He wasn't interested. He said, sorry, I was a young guy with no background in it, nothing. And he was like, sorry. But I kept on bothering him. And he sort of pushed me to the side to somebody that worked at his company and said, go talk to her, see if you can intern here. So I went in and met this person. It was the manager of his company. They said the same thing. There's no jobs. sorry. And I said, well, let me intern. They're like, we don't really have interns. And finally, she's like, all right, you can come intern. You can come in on Tuesdays and Thursdays. I just started going in every single day. I wasn't making any money. I just went in every day.
Yeah.
And I just, that's what I did. Oh, by the way, if I'm talking too long, you let me know. I'm
No,
just,
no, it's
yeah.
great.
Okay. Okay, cool. Yeah, so I started interning on the record label side, working for the record label, doing the worst jobs, like the most minimal. Number one, I wasn't getting paid. Number two, it was like filing and sending letters, and not what I thought the music industry would be. I quickly learned within 2 or 3 months that I didn't want to work for the record label, but I didn't know what that meant. And I was lucky because this guy, he had a law firm, a record label, a publishing company, and a management company all in the same building.
Wow, that's kind of unique, I would say, in the industry. Yeah.
Yeah, very unique, especially for Canada. So I slowly, without anybody telling me to, I slowly started not doing my work at the record label. Even I was an intern, so I was like, they can't fire me. Well, maybe they could, but I started working with some of the managers there, and I didn't even know what it meant to be an artist manager. I had no idea. I just knew I wanted to work closely with an artist and help with their creative process and just help them. And then from there, I just slowly started making my way up. And I worked with some very unknown artists who never became anything. And I was also lucky enough to work with some really good ones at the very lowest level. Like my former boss, I remember he put me on the road with this new really cool group in Nelly Furtado. And Nelly Furtado was the biggest thing in Canada and one of the biggest things in the world at that time. I couldn't believe it. I went to Miami and I went all over the place with them and thinking, wow, this is really cool. But at the very lowest level. And I just kept on trying to make myself invaluable or bring value, all while pretty much not knowing what I was doing. I was just sort of faking it till you make it.
Yeah.
But I had a really good mentor in my boss. His name is Chris Taylor, and there was some of the other staff who became very close friends of mine who were obviously experienced. They helped me along the way, and it was just a long process. It wasn't easy, but I don't think I would be here if I didn't go through all that.
Yeah, it sounds like you really have a story of perseverance. I mean, I feel like a lot of the people, when they start off in the industry, they kind of have to, climb their way up. And I think that's a true example. You start with the internships, and then slowly you start, making your way, showing you're valuable and what you're good at. And then you start figuring out, what you like. So that's quite an interesting, come up. That's what we call it. So we heard about your come up. How would you define your position currently? And can you tell us some of the qualities that someone needs to have to kind of excel in this position or do their job, efficiently?
Yeah, I'll start with the qualities that I think, and this is just what works for me and what I think in our team, because we have a team, in our team, what I think everybody needs to have, and it will take you a long way. Actually, Steve Aoki has a motto, and one of the things he always says is, by any means necessary, which is from a famous Malcolm X quote. And we use that a lot for everything. And I actually think that holds true. It's like, just like my past, I was going to have to like make my way by any means necessary. And I think a lot of people think, well, you know what? I'm working really hard. I've been working really hard for this past year. I deserve it. You're not guaranteed anything in life. You're not, nothing's promised you. So I think perseverance obviously is number one. I think positive attitude. It's very hard to stay positive in anything in life, but in music, I find it's very hard because you never know what's going to happen. I think being positive, if you can be the most positive in the room, as well as the most hardworking in the room, I think you'll go a long way. and just don't be lazy. You know, I don't expect people to work 24/7 and just, you know, I want people to be happy and have a personal life, but just don't be lazy, because if you're lazy, not only does it affect the team you're on, but it's just going to affect your own growth. So yeah, I think maybe for me it's positivity, perseverance, don't be lazy, and those are the main ones right now that I can think of.
And then, so all of these characteristics that your team has, and of course you have, since I've heard your story and your come up, how do you apply that to your position, and what exactly are you doing? Because, you know, there's manager, there's day-to-day manager. So give us some insight to what do you do fundamentally for the company?
Well, so for Steve, you know, Steve is, I'm lucky that I get to work with Steve. I think he's one of the most prolific artists and businessmen out there. You know, the guy has been doing, usually for the last 10 years, at least 250 shows a year. He puts out a lot of music. He has multiple businesses. He's involved in a lot of things. A lot of people don't have the passion and the stamina, maybe more importantly, the stamina to do that. So we all follow Steve's lead, and that's a big lead to follow, because he's very, very passionate and ambitious. But it's contagious, because when he gets passionate and ambitious, I feel like I do as well. And we also have a great team. You know, on the management team, what do we have? We have quite a few people that are all part of the management team that serve different roles, whether it's in the digital and social media. We have a marketing person that's solely focused on marketing. We have day-to-day, we have like myself, we have other sort of senior managers. There was, we had unfortunately, one of our longtime, very, very close friends, and his European manager passed away. I guess it was, 2 months ago. Wow. And he sort of covered all the European territories in terms of the management. But for me, I'm like sort of like a funnel for everything. There's nothing I don't really touch in his world.
That's
and that
a big task, being the funnel.
Yeah, you know what, you got to get into the groove, and you know, luckily I feel like I've been doing this for a long time, that I understand how to like time management, and maybe more importantly stress management, because it is a lot, but it also takes a really strong team. You know, you can't do this on your own at this level. And why would you want to? Because you're probably going to sacrifice your personal life or personal health if you try to do everything. But we have a really, really strong team. I would say, you know, a big part of the term manager is delegating. Oh, there goes my dog. Is delegating to the right people and the right teams, you know, and not feeling like you have to do everything yourself, which I've been bad at that in the past. But you have to know how to delegate, and then you also have to have really good people and allow them to do their job. Like, we have people on their team, I would never tell them how to do their job, because they can do it way better than me. And I'm like, you do that. You're better at that. I know what my strengths are, and I know what my weaknesses are. And I'm lucky enough that we have so many people on our team that are super strong in the areas that I'm probably weak at.
Oh, so it sounds like, you know, there's a lot of management styles in practice. There's collaborative, there's participative, authoritarian. And so my question for you is, which one are you? But if I take what you've just said, I feel like you're a very collaborative and participative type of management style.
Yeah, I would say that's true. And I think the credit also goes to Steve on that as well, because that's the way Steve operates. We have a very team-oriented sort of philosophy. So a lot of times, even things that maybe some of the people on their team aren't necessarily they need to be involved in, we involve everybody because we want everybody to understand what's going on at all times, who's doing what, and just what's going on in his life. I don't want to, even for myself, I would probably be mortified if I like, you know, like one day I didn't know what was going on. I would feel like I was not doing my job, even if it had nothing to do with me, even if it wasn't my responsibility. I would still probably feel like, wow, I should have known. I think our whole team's collaborative. It's not really, I don't think you could succeed on this team if you were sort of a lone wolf and was like, I'm just going to work in my little world and update people when I feel they need to be updated. We communicate all day long.
I feel like that's kind of the way that it has to be when you've got a team around you and such a big name like Steve Aoki. He's got so many different aspects that's the only way that it works if everyone's communicating efficiently. But for me, for me, I wonder is, I mean, I'm sure you get this question a lot, is like, what's the hardest and most rewarding part of working with someone like Steve Aoki? You know, that is the Forbes 5 top highest paid DJ, that's an entrepreneur, that's on the DJ mat, you know, all these different credentials. Like, can you tell everyone what's the hardest and the most rewarding part of all of the chaos?
Yeah, I would say almost on a regular basis, I wake up very grateful. I understand. You know, maybe a better way of putting this is I'm working with somebody 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I would have dreamed to work with in terms of what they're doing in their career. Steve's also a really great person. And so you kind of get the benefit of working with somebody that inspires me because of how much he's accomplished, and he has no sign of slowing down. So that just forces me to want to strive with him, which is what living's all about. In some ways, he's also a nice person, so that makes it better. His family's amazing. That makes it another perk. The other side of it is like I get to do so much. The perks are, you know, if you asked me 5 years ago, the perks would be like, oh, I get to go all over the world and I get to meet these people and I get to do that stuff and I get to do that stuff. That stuff's all great. I'm so grateful for that. But now, you know, I went into this wanting to work in music, which I have been doing. But the great thing about Steve is I've worked on movies with him. I've worked on books with him. I've worked on comic books with him. I've worked on TV shows with him. I've worked on fashion lines with him. You name it. That it was sort of the best university over the last X amount of years that I've had, because I never thought I'd be working on movies or books or TV shows or understanding how fashion works or understanding how the art world works. Because of him, I've got to do all that. Those are the perks that I cherish and I'm very grateful for, because all the music stuff, it was my dream and I got to do it and I'm still doing it. Great. That's amazing. I get to go to these cool shows and meet great people. And, you know, I have so many friends around the world now because of this job, which is so amazing. The hard part is, and this, I think a lot of people in my position or in this industry feel the same way. The hard part is detaching. It's very easy to become stressed out, burned out, and not because the job is terrible, but because you just don't allow yourself to take a break. You know, we're all on our phones all day long, and I sometimes I wake up in the middle of the night, write an email, and I don't even remember doing it, and then I look at the email and it was perfectly written, and I don't even remember doing it. All I know is like I think I woke up at like 4 a.m, grabbed my phone, wrote an email, and went back to sleep right away. I was half asleep, and I still wrote a really good email. That's worrisome, because like that just means that you're not taking a break. And we all need like a very, very equal and positive social life, family life, personal life. That's been my hardest thing, is finding a balance between those two.
Yeah. Are you able, I mean, surely I think you are, but are you able to really get that disconnect? Like, are you truly able at any point, being in such a significant position, able to just put your phone down and have like one day where you don't look at it? Or is that just like impossible?
I think it's impossible.
Yeah.
The blame is on myself. I'm sure there's a way to do it. I know other managers who do it and do it successfully. I'm a work in progress. I think I got a lot to learn about myself, and taking that time. I'm better than I was, 5 years ago, 8 years ago, or even when I first started. All I did was I never shut off. Even when I was an intern, I never shut off, and I wasn't even doing anything. I was obsessed with trying to succeed. And now I think it's really important to have that, but life can go by pretty quickly. And, there's a lot of important things out there that aren't necessarily your job.
Yeah, I think overall it's hard to always find that balance, because every manager obviously is different with different characteristics, but I feel like, at least from having this conversation with you, it seems like you have this perseverance and this kind of characteristic, where you keep climbing and you keep experiencing. And I think the really unique thing is that you have this relationship with Steve where when he's growing, you're growing as well. And that's such a wonderful opportunity to have in this industry, is that you're able to try new things even when you're living your dream. I think that's really special. I think it's really cool. So we want to open it up to some questions. I'm going to throw it over to Mike and let Mike take over for just a few minutes.
Great. So let's start with the questions. There are so many questions here. I'm going to open the microphone to the people who wants to ask directly to you, Dougie.
Okay.
First of all, is Sarah. Okay, let me open the microphone. And okay, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. How are you, Dougie?
Yeah, good. How are you?
Thank you, I'm fine. I just wanted to ask you, is it easy in this industry to forget about being humble or to stay down to earth?
I think for some people, yes. I feel like I've been grounded. I think it has a lot to do with where I grew up, and probably my parents and my family. I think that helped. I have met a lot of people that perhaps aren't as humble. And I think with these type of industries, it can really change you. But what I will say is, for the amount of people out there that aren't humble and maybe aren't the best,
Yes.
there are an equal or maybe more amount of people that are great, humble, and nice. I think it's easy to focus on the people that maybe have lost their way and aren't very nice, but at least lately, I've met so many nice, humble people.
All right. And I have another question. Like, why did you decide to go to LA instead of New York City, for instance?
Well, that one I have to give credit to Steve for. Steve was the one who persuaded me to move to LA. He was the one who, basically, he was like, I need you to be in LA. He essentially moved me from Canada to Los Angeles.
Okay, so just want to say that I like the way you are. You're just saying that it's only we can succeed only if we work hard, and it's a great thing. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for your question.
Mike, you're mute. You have to unmute yourself.
Oh, sorry. I'm gonna go with the second one. It's from Boar. The microphone is open.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me? Yeah. Thanks for being here. Thanks to the 3Sixty guys for having you here and for making this possible. I think it's great for all of us. I have a double question. The first one you sort of already answered it, but it's like, if you are a 100% manager in the sense that you take care of all aspects of Steve's life. You said before that you were working with him on comics books, but I'm also interested on the producing side, whether you work with him on like which is the best track that we can release. This makes sense, doesn't make sense. That's my first
Yeah.
question.
Oh, yeah. For if I collaborate him on the music stuff, was that your question?
Yeah, I'm advising him and managing him in that perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say on the creative side, it's somewhat collaborative. That's one category. I leave it to him. I trust his opinion. The great thing about Steve is he'll ask, what do you think about this? Or do you like this? Or do you not like this? But at the end of the day, that's what he does best. So I usually leave that up to him. If he wants my opinion, I'll give it. But he probably trusts himself more than he trusts me to give advice on music.
Yeah. And my second question is, which key contacts, not in terms of people or specific names, but in terms of roles, should a manager have in his or her agenda?
Like for yourself, like what kind of roles?
Yeah, I mean, like which key contacts you should have on your phone. I mean, which?
Oh, what contacts?
Yeah.
Well, it's always good to have, for depending on your artist and where they're at. Of course, all our team, agent, whoever his agents are, whoever his publicists are. It's good to have his music lawyer's contact. I like to have relationships with people in radio and in media. So for me, those would be the first important ones: is his music lawyer, his agents, his publicist, whoever's on the team. I'm lucky enough, I have his family's information because we're all friends. And so maybe some key contacts in the industry that work at radio, that work at TV, and maybe some magazines. Those are the ones I would put in first, for myself at least.
Cool. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Well, we have another question from Albert. I'm gonna open the microphone again.
Okay,
it's
hello.
already open.
Yeah. Do you think it's possible or reliable to work with various artists at the same time, or is just better to focus on one and just with him?
I think it's possible. For my situation, I just focus on Steve, mostly because when the world is normal and not in a pandemic, he does 250 shows a year. So he's on a plane almost every single day of his life, plus his music. I just wouldn't be able to give my best quality focus to another artist without taking away something from Steve. But with that being said, I have many manager friends that manage multiple people. I think it all depends on the team you have to support you in managing those people. And I think if you have artists that maybe aren't as busy as Steve, it's possible. I think if, some traditional artists, maybe they only tour 40 times a year and put out a record every 2 or 3 years, it might be easier. I'm not actually sure, but it might be easier to manage a couple. But in my situation, I wouldn't want to work with anybody else at this moment, mostly because he's so busy, and I would just worry, something would get dropped.
So that was a really good question. Now we're gonna go on to block 2, but during our chat and our questions, everyone can still keep asking questions in the chat, and then we'll open it up again for a Q&A block after this little section. This section I called involvement, obstacles, and resolutions, let's say. So I was gonna ask this question, but I feel like it's kind of already covered, but I'll just ask it and let's see. I wonder, so maybe you could answer on behalf of some other managers that you know. It seems from the conversation we've had that you're quite involved with decision-making process for Steve. So I wonder if managers across the board are very involved in the decision-making process, and if so, to what extent and what aspects?
I guess it depends on the artist, what they feel comfortable or works for them best. At the end of the day, myself and the rest of the team are very involved, but it's all led by Steve too. We would never make a decision that Steve didn't feel comfortable with, meaning he's part of these conversations. We of course give our opinion and our expertise and give reasons why maybe you should do something and maybe you shouldn't do something. And I think with other artists, it really depends on what they prefer. Speaking of some of my friends that are managers, it seems to be that it's all very similar to what we do. It's very collaborative. It's very communicative. I think like anything, like if you don't communicate, whether it's you're in a relationship or you're working with somebody, if the communication is not there, it will eventually fall apart. And I think the other manager friends that I admire the most, they seem to have the same system in place.
And while we're talking about communication, I think this kind of ties in. So what kind of challenges do you face, or does a manager face at the beginning and throughout his or her career? And what advice do you have for someone that's just beginning, or someone that's already there at the top, of how to overcome those communication challenges or other sorts of obstacles?
Well, I'll speak about the beginning, the early stages of me, long before Steve, and when I was just starting out. I think it's not easy. I think some people are lucky. Some people, find an artist, they have no managerial skills, and within 6 months or a year of picking up, something happens and it's just great timing and great luck. And next thing they know, they're managing a superstar. That doesn't happen. That's like hitting the lottery, but it does happen. And I think for anybody getting in is, don't expect it to be easy. Don't expect it to go the way you think it should go. Because that's another thing. People are like, well, this should happen. This should be easier. This artist should be successful. This song should be bigger. Like it's so hard to gauge. It's one of those sort of cliche situations. And this is about myself. When I look back, I'm like, wow, there was like so many losses, so many failures, so many disappointing things. Well, like way more than the positives. But the positives that were there were the ones that pushed me up a level each time. So even though there was all these like trials and errors, anytime there was a win, even if it was little, it advanced me a little bit more and a little bit more. And honestly, like, at least for myself, if I didn't have that, if I didn't have that experience, maybe I wouldn't be humble. Maybe I would be a little delusional. I'm grateful for that experience. I can only really speak to my early days of that. Yeah.
I think the early days are also the hardest. I mean, I can only speak for myself, but I can relate to, when you just start out in your career and you're pushing and you're persevering and you're learning from your mistakes. I think it's a valuable lesson, is just to keep learning and keep absorbing and keep trying. It's sort of like trial and error, even when you're at the top, there's still mistakes, and it's just about collaborating and learning and trying to proceed. So
and you said something about mistakes. The mistakes never end.
Yeah,
they never end. Everybody in life makes mistakes, and some are bigger than others, and it's how you react. Because that's another thing that can drive you crazy, is trying to be perfect or not forgiving yourself for the mistakes you make. Listen, we all make mistakes.
Yeah, reaction is also something that can come into play when it comes to disagreements and arguments. So if you can speak about it, what kind of disagreements have you experienced that you can tell us about? And what tools did you use to resolve, and what kind of attitude did you have to just come to a resolution?
Well, I think the majority of my disagreements or maybe stressful moments aren't necessarily within our team or with Steve. You know, part of the job of a manager is to represent the best interests of your artist. And that means there's sometimes, you know, between partners, you never know, like there are situations where you're always fighting for the best interests of your artist. And sometimes the fighting is, you know, it's very heated conversations with confrontational people, because everybody wants something. You know, you're fighting for the best deal or the best care or the best possible situation for your artist, and the person on the other side may not care what you value. So it's like any negotiation, whether you're a manager, I would guess if you're a lawyer or if you work in anything, whenever you're negotiating, negotiations aren't always easy and they're not always positive. I think two lessons I've learned throughout life is to try and stay as calm as possible.
Zen.
Yeah, really, because not just it's number one and most important for you, because you're only hurting yourself if you lose control. And also, if you stay pretty calm with people that are yelling or screaming at you, they get pretty quiet pretty soon if you stay calm and quiet. And then also don't burn bridges. Even if people deserve it, if this person was so out of line, so disrespectful, so this, so that, try your best to walk away without burning that bridge. Because people have bad days, people have different agendas. You don't know what's going on in people's lives. And surprisingly, sometimes people that you felt maybe was your worst enemy 2-3 years ago becomes a friend or an ally down the road, if you keep it civil and calm.
Interesting.
Because it's like life. Like, you know, if there's somebody in school when you're a little kid that was your enemy, you know, like you never know what will happen later on if you keep it cool. You don't want to have enemies for life. You don't want to have people being like, oh, I hate that guy. He was this or he was that. If you don't give them that opportunity, it's really hard for them to say bad things about you.
Yeah, it's like that we have. It's the 3 C's: cool, calm, collective. You know, just being in composure at all times.
And honestly, take away that from, you know, dealing with people. It's just better for yourself, because at the end of the day, you got to live with yourself and you have to go to bed at night. So, you know, like trying to fight fire with fire, you'll probably get burned too. So
yeah. Also, it's probably an extreme headache, I can imagine, if you're just barking at people, you know, all day long. I'm sure it kind of limits your creative process if you're constantly stressed out, when you could channel that energy into something more important or something that's positive, like you said, positivity, right?
Yeah, because I think if you chose in this industry, whether it's a position like a management style position or anything in the music industry, I'm sure you could argue all day long and be in confrontations all day long if you chose to. It's very easy because, you know, this is just the nature of business. But you may not live very long or be very happy if you're constantly stressed out and angry.
Makes sense. I agree. You know, you want to live a long life and prosperous and not have that target on your back, so to speak.
Yeah, and also to add to that is if you are like that, the people that matter most in your life won't want to be around you, because it will eventually seep into your personal life if you're negative and stressed out all the time.
Yeah, I feel like no matter how hard you try to disconnect your personal and your work life, they somewhat, and at least in this industry, they all somehow kind of always coordinate together, whether you want it to happen or not.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a really good question, and I want to pass it over to Mike to have our user ask. I think it's great. It relates to what we're chatting about now.
Yes, there are some questions. The first one is from Amir Osman. I'm gonna open your microphone so you can ask directly. Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
First of all, thanks for the invitation. And just one question, really quick, regarding the future in the music industry in such a hard circumstances, that we are going through right now with the COVID-19 situation. So how is your perspective and I mean, as a person, involved in the music industry, you are very close and probably getting a faster reaction, what's going on and what's going to happen in the future. So if you might give a hint, what's going to look like in the next couple of months or maybe next year.
Yeah, that's really, really good question. Really good question. A question or a conversation I have daily with friends and my team. It's still a little bit unclear in terms of when performances will come back to the way, to a degree that they once were. I'm not sure at this stage when that's going to happen. The one thing I do know is, and this isn't just for Steve, this is for some of my other friends in the industry. I feel like Steve and some other artists that I know are making the best music they've made in a long time right now. I think adversity, I think this change, this shift in the world has sparked creativity in people. People are at home, people are feeling things they may have never felt before. And I think the music that's going to come from this is going to be really, really strong and inspiring, and maybe a shift in what people are actually trying to say to the world. In terms of performances, I think like one of the things we're seeing in America right now is they're starting to roll out these, I think they did one in Germany recently. They're sort of drive-in concerts. That's starting to roll out, I think, this month. To what degree of success, I'm not sure. I'm excited to see. I don't want to be negative and think this is going to fail. I'm excited to see how that will go. But I do think, personally, this is my personal opinion, I'm no expert. I don't know anything about biology or how the world will open or not open. I think there will be some time. I think we're going to have to be patient. I don't know if we're going to see shows this year like we saw last year. It feels like a lot of people are thinking probably not. Yeah, I really don't know. I really don't know. I just know that the one thing I am optimistic about is the music is really good. From some of the artists I've been hearing, what they've been making, it's really, really good and different. And the other thing too is I think, music will never, ever go away no matter what happens. And I think when the world is open and free from fears of the virus, where we can go back to the regular shows, I feel like it's going to be stronger, and I feel like people are going to be more appreciative and grateful. And I actually think the atmosphere of these festivals and shows are going to be much more loving and uniting. Maybe like this is a festival reference, but maybe like the feeling you get when you go to Tomorrowland and everybody is just there feeling like so grateful to be there with all these people from around the world. I really hope that's the way it goes. That's what I'm betting on, at least.
Okay. Hope so.
Yeah, me too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, let's continue with the questions. This is a great one from Marcel, the one Jordan was talking about. All right, you have the microphone open right now.
Hi, do you hear me?
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. Okay, hello. Yeah, thanks everyone for holding this and making this possible. So, as you said, your journey has been a long way up with some highs and lows, as everyone. And I'd like to ask, how many times and in which situations have you decided to throw the towel or leave a situation that isn't working for you, like in any dispute with someone? Because sometimes even if you win a dispute or with someone, you're probably losing lots of things too. So yeah, what's your opinion?
You're so right. Sometimes it's like the strategy of going, sometimes there's going to be a stalemate in a negotiation and there's no way around it. Sometimes, I think there's always a way through. The creativity of the negotiation or dealing with, we'll call it conflict resolution, is finding out a way to give something away that people will appreciate while still getting what you want, but making it feel like everybody's winning. Everybody has an ideal situation of like, it has to go this way. This is what I want. If I don't get this, we're not doing it. That's usually their first emotional stance. You got to be patient, probably just like anything. You got to be patient, and it might take an hour, it might take 2 weeks, but finally get to a spot. But there's also, listen, I've thrown in my towel on situation and deals that just were not going to go. Sometimes it takes 3-4 days, and I'm like, all right, well, we just got to walk away from this. Sometimes you got to cut your losses. Sometimes things aren't just meant to be. And actually going back to my, probably 10 years ago in Toronto, I was managing an artist that was a developing artist that I really, really believed in. And I was working really, really hard. So was this artist. And we were coming up against roadblock after roadblock after roadblock after roadblock, and it went on for about a year, where it just was like a slow sink. It was just, things were just not working. We couldn't get things together. That was probably the only time, not in a negotiation, but in a job, where I actually, after a year, I threw in the towel myself. I called it quits. There was a point where I used to regret that decision, but when I look back on it now, I had to. I probably wouldn't be here if I didn't do that. And also, I actually made myself sick. I was a lot younger, and I was like, my health was at risk. I was so stressed out trying to make something work that was just clearly not working, that I threw it in because I got exhausted. I was sick. And I regretted that for a long time. But when I look back now, I realize it was for the better. And I think some things just don't work out. Just because you think it should, or you want it to, or sometimes it just doesn't.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
So now we're going to go to our last block, which is kind of like a back office, and some questions just popped in there, just overall. So one of the first questions is, of course, you've spoken about team, and I'm sure when you're working with a team, you have to have organization. So we're curious, as a manager, what project management tools do you use? What iPhone apps do you have? What programs do you have that help your day-to-day, help you organize better, help your team be more efficient? Tell us.
So we're pretty standard. I would say the number one tool we use is WhatsApp. We have a million WhatsApp groups going at all times, and these conversations are going all day long. That's our number one. That's not very advanced. It's not a very advanced tool. We use all the Google Sheets, docs. We share documents so much, and we have, like, whether it's projects or just schedules, everything sort of falls through the Google suite of products. Besides that, I'm not that savvy. There's people on my team that are a little bit more savvy, like our marketing people. They use Slack. I don't actually use it. There's a couple different sort of organizational apps that some of the people on our team use. They always give me a hard time because I never use any of them. I'm very much myself an email, WhatsApp, and Google, shared Google Doc kind of guy. I could probably, use some of these things a little bit better that are out there. I just haven't had the time or interest. There was a time I used to try things out all the time. Like, I'm going to switch this, or I'm going to like add this new reminder system in. And then I always found out I just went back to the system that I've always used.
Sometimes it's like you take the time to learn something new and then you just end up reverting back to your old ways because you spend so much time trying to be efficient and then you're not being efficient in the end. It's like,
I've done that. I've probably done that 50 times. I don't know how many times I could tell you. I'm going to try a new this. And then a week later, this calendar system doesn't work for me. Yeah.
It's like the bread and butter, it's a saying that we have in the States for our Spanish listeners. It's just the simple things, the simple calendar, the simple WhatsApp, the simple things just work and they work well.
That works for me. I do work with some people, and I have some friends in the industry that they have very, very advanced systems that they use very, very well. And maybe I'm a little bit envious, but I'm gonna stick with my basics.
Stick with what you know. Always is always a good call. So when it comes to your team and your agency, could you tell us how the structure works? How does information flow in terms of, press, accountants, managers, day-to-day, logistics? There's so many different departments and kind of how the funnel works.
Yeah, so, apart from a very active WhatsApp app with a million different, we have different groups. We have a PR group, we have a show group, we have various groups that is sort of real-time communication, but we do, a couple calls a week, regular. We have a weekly marketing call, a weekly press call. We have a weekly, before I got on the call with you, I had a press call with our European PR team. So we have a couple calls every week at the same time to go over, all right, this is to go over his records and what's coming out musically. This is to go over the press. This is to go over marketing plans. We have a call to go over, Steve has multiple investments. So today we have a call to go over his investments. So it's constant communication, weekly calls that everybody's on. In terms of in performances, we have, it's usually through emails, like our agents, whether in America or in Europe or in South America or Asia, they pass through emails, even now that the world's somewhat closed, on a daily basis to sort of a few key people on the team of oh, we have this coming up, or our publicist will email our whole team, usually our whole team, everybody on the management team, the other publicists around the world, and our marketing people, and they'll say, we have this opportunity for Steve to do an interview with this person. So, just an idea of what I do, maybe on average, is probably right now 250 emails a day. I probably get somewhere between 200 and 250 every single day. And that's not to say every single one of them needs a long reply, but it's usually information. And with every aspect of what he's doing. And some of it is information that needs to be answered right away, or it's like, in January, we have this opportunity for you. It's a lot of emails and a lot of WhatsApps.
It seems like this is actually interesting. Do you have someone that helps filter out your emails, or do you read every single one of them?
Man, that sounds great. I know it's all me. And I think everybody on our team is in the same boat of how many emails they get. A lot of these emails, some team members don't even need to respond. It's not about them responding. It's just for they're CC'd, so they understand what's going on and when and what, where, why. But yeah, I go through my emails all day, every day.
I can imagine. It seems like Steve is a really active artist, even during this downtime. It seems like he's got plans and obviously rearranging shows. I'm sure there's a lot of reschedules, but also we saw that there was the 4-night concert, which was super, super cool. And that's something that is kind of shifting within electronic music, and also, I mean, Travis Scott as well. A lot of artists are jumping on board of this. So is there any tips or anything that you can share with us of what's to come next? How did you guys think of this idea? How are you guys staying current during COVID? You know, like brainstorming, anything. How did this idea come about, and anything you can
Well, this one I think came from goodwill. So Steve, for people that don't know this, Steve has been a big gamer for forever, 10 years. He travels the world with a PlayStation. Like, he's been a legitimate lover of gaming for a decade. He also owns an esports team. And I think through many things he's done personally as a gamer, or with his esports team, which is called Team Rogue, or we've done a lot of different sort of gaming events in the past, like celebrity tournaments, or, you know, tournaments to raise money for charity. I think they saw Fortnite, and Steve's a big fan of Fortnite. I think it all came together where Fortnite saw Steve's love of gaming, his love of Fortnite, and also he's very active. If you follow him on socials, throughout this pandemic, he's been very active doing live streams and doing a bunch of really cool things online that I think he was the perfect fit for them. And we were just lucky enough that they liked Steve and they chose Steve, because, you know, we were very, very grateful and honored to be involved with that. That was a really, really cool and fun thing they did, and really meaningful. They got a lot of viewers, and the feedback was great. And, you know, it was just something we were very grateful to do.
Yeah, it seems like there was a good brand activation alongside with Steve being able to just be that personality with all of the extra, let's say, curricular things that he does. It seems like being able to take the things that you do on your downtime as an artist and play those up during this, you know, level of no shows, it seems to play off in a way which is very interesting and very beneficial. I'm excited to see what else he has up his sleeve. It's that Fortnite. I was really surprised. I was like, okay, the future of gaming, you know, it's really like opening up new doors and new windows and consoles, so to speak.
We have a bunch of really cool things over the next probably like 30 to 60 days. We have a couple other really cool things coming. So
everyone needs to stay tuned, because
follow him on socials, and you'll see him probably announce some stuff, and that's where you're going to see, like, there's some really, really cool things that, you know, I think we're all very, very grateful that we get to be a part of. We did some really cool stuff for charity throughout this pandemic on live streams as well, which was like really, really cool that we got to be a part of that.
Yeah, it seems like everyone's stepping out of their box and giving back and being creative and taking this time to try new things. It's interesting to see the music world kind of open up in a different way and really challenge people to not just do live streams, but to do something else, to have a different impact. So I applaud your team, Steve Aoki. It's very cool.
I agree. I agree. I want to just say that one of the positives of all this was we get to do some different things, but a lot of it is very impactful. And I think too, you know, at least with Steve has sort of a world fan base. We've had the time to connect with so many people around the world, which is really, really cool.
Yeah. Well, I wish that we had time for a Q&A, but we don't. We extended the chat a little bit. So I do want to end with something that we do with all of our guest speakers, which is our guilty pleasure. So our question is, what is that one song that you can't get out of your head? You know, you sing it in the shower, or you're doing your workout and it's just constantly there. What song is that?
Oh, wow. Okay. Is that a new song or an old song?
Does it
matter?
It doesn't matter. It can be EDM, country, techno, whatever's just stuck in your head that you're just walking around your house or cooking dinner or doing your thing and you just have it drilled inside.
There's a couple. Let me think of one that would be the best one, I think. It's an old song. Maybe people, I think some people will know it. It's from the Beach Boys.
Really?
It's called Sloop John B.
I don't know it, but I know the Beach Boys.
It's a weird pick, but for some reason, when it gets stuck in my head, it gets stuck in my head.
Okay, I'm gonna write that down now, and I'm gonna play it back, and let's see what it is. Is it like surfy vibes or?
Not really. It sounds like the Beach Boys, but it's a weird song, but it's good. It's not an EDM song. It's not the usual, EDM or hip hop song that I may listen to, but it gets stuck in my head.
It's always good to have that one song, It doesn't matter if it's EDM or not. It just makes you happy.
There is a piano song that I listen to. It's no lyrics that get stuck in my head too, but that one's just a melody gets stuck in my head.
That seems like it's something good for like emails, when you need like a calm moment, or when you're in a disagreement, you just have that piano song in the background and it soothes you. All right, well, thank you so much for joining us. It means a lot to us to have you here on our first English chat. This was our first talk with
cool.
an international speaker. So thank you for joining us, and yeah.
Well, I appreciate you guys having me, and thank you for everybody and their questions and just listening in. I'm very happy to be here.
Thank you, and hopefully we'll be able to have you back soon. And I'll be watching Steve Aoki stuff and see what else he has for us.
That sounds good.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye. Bueno, pues